Hello everyone, this is Miss Dasher, and for this lesson, we're going to be taking a look at measures and what that looks like in our music. As you can see, the horizontal lines in the staff can be crossed by many kinds of perpendicular lines. For this lesson, we are going to focus on the most common perpendicular line, which is called the bar line. Notice how the bar line is vertical and goes straight down across the 5 horizontal lines. See if you can count how many bar lines are in the staff. Bar lines are also used to divide the staff. The space that's in between 2 bar lines is called a measure. The space between the clef symbol and a bar line creates the first measure in the staff. As you can see in the example above, the treble clef is at the beginning of the staff. Then after that, we have our first space, which is measure 1. Next, we have our first bar line. Then following that first bar line is our second space, which is measure 2. We now know that a single bar line is a vertical line that divides the staff. But if you look at the staff above, what kind of bar lines could be at the very end? Usually at the very end of a piece of music, there's always one thin bar line and then one thick bar line that are next together. These 2 lines make up what is called the final bar line. You can see what that final bar line looks like above inside the red circle. Here's what the single bar lines, as well as the final bar line, look like all together in the staff. See if you can count how many measures there are. Remember, a measure is the space created by 1 or more bar lines. In this staff, we have a total of 3 measures. On the far left, we have our first space, which is measure 1, and that's divided by 2 single bar lines. Next, we have our second space, which is measure 2, and that is also divided by 2 single bar lines. Finally, we have our third space on the far right, which is measure 3. Measure 3 has a single bar line on the left, and then also has the final bar line to its right. Here we have another staff, and it may look a bit different from what we've seen before. See if you can count how many measures there are. First, take your finger and try to touch each bar line that's in the staff. Remember, the bar line is a vertical line that goes straight down across the 5 horizontal lines in the staff. Next, after that, try to count how many spaces are in between those bar lines. Take a look at the arrows above the staff, and notice how they're pointing at the bar lines, as well as another arrow, which is at the end of the staff, and is pointing at the final bar line. See if you can count how many spaces are in between those lines. In the staff, we have a total of 4 measures. So starting from the left, we have our first space, which is measure 1. Following measure 1, we have our first bar line. Following that first bar line, we have the second space, which is measure 2. After measure 2, we have our second bar line. Following the second bar line, we have the third space, which is measure 3. And after measure 3, we have the third bar line. And finally, after following that third bar line, we have our fourth space, which is measure 4. If you counted up all those spaces, we have a total of 4 spaces, which means we have a total of 4 measures. We have some vocabulary for this lesson. We have the bar line, which is known as a single perpendicular line that's used to divide the staff. We also have the final bar line, which is used to indicate the end of the piece, and is also made with one thin line and then one thick line next together. Finally, we have the measure, which is known as the space between 1 or more perpendicular lines. To review, we have learned that there are both parallel as well as perpendicular lines that cross each other within the staff. A single perpendicular line that divides the staff is called a bar line. 2 bar lines together, one of them being thin and one of them being thick, creates the final bar line, which marks the end of a piece. We also know that the space between 2 bar lines is called a measure. For review, go back to the slides with the examples from the lesson, then practice locating where the bar lines are in the staff. Also try to count how many measures there are, or how many spaces. You can also look at any music handouts and see if you can find the single bar lines, and also locate where the music ends with the final bar line. Remember that we're always here to help, so if you have any questions, send those questions to Mr. Heffler. You can see his contact email below. Thank you all so much for watching. Go ahead and give yourself a pat on the back because you made it through the lesson, and that's an accomplishment. If you have any questions, don't be afraid to ask, and thanks for watching.